How's it going, everyone? James Lynch here. I'm an MMA reporter, journalist, content creator. Ben, how's it going, man?
Your camera quality is a little too good. How is that possible?
It's because I'm using a DSLR camera for my setup. It's like one of the best streaming cameras you can get. So it's
awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'm gonna ask you, how's your day going today?
My day's going well. I've had a few interviews with some athletes, like I normally do for my job. I did a bit of editing, and then I'm gonna go golfing later today. So it's a pretty good day, I'd say.
Okay, perfect. And do you record and even edit all your content yourself?
I do, yes. Yeah. So my background is in it's in television, but I learned how to edit and create content and all that when I was in college. So I kind of, I do everything. Yeah.
Awesome. And I want to ask you, what made you say yes to the podcast today?
I just like getting my name out there. And I always like doing podcasts and sort of meeting different people and making different connections. And I think every podcast, whether it's, some kid in high school wanting to, talk about something or anyone else, I think it's good to just get your brand out there. I'm very big on that. So more than happy to come on and chat, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. I really appreciate you saying yes. And I want to ask you, how did you get started on your journey as a sports and MMA commentator and a journalist?
Well, it's interesting. So I'll give you the shorter version, and then we can dig into things a little bit more. But basically, I always knew I wanted to be in broadcasting. I studied communications at university, and then I did 2 years of college in a television broadcasting program. And I knew from a very young age I wanted to get into it. But being in Canada, I wanted to actually be a hockey broadcaster. And I played hockey growing up. And somewhere along the way when I was in university, I got really interested in mixed martial arts and the UFC. And kind of when I was going, trying to look for work and all that, I kind of realized that this was a sport that didn't have a lot of media coverage. And I felt like if I went this route, I'd have more success because there's just so many people trying to be in hockey. And I think it would have been great. I probably would have still ended up, achieving my goal of becoming a hockey broadcaster. But this way, it was just, I felt like I was just more passionate about mixed martial arts at the time. And so, the first job I ever had in the mixed martial arts industry was I'd moved to Toronto at the time in Canada, and they had a 24-hour sports network. It still exists. It's called Fight Network. And they were really big into obviously covering fights. So that was a great spot for me to sort of start out. I learned how to really edit a lot better than I'd learned in university. So I started as an editor, eventually worked my way up to some producing and some voiceover work, and then ended up leaving there after a few years to go freelance. And then I just had a day job in television. And then I was always freelancing on the side. And I started doing fighter interviews. And that was something I was just doing on the side from my regular day job, which was in television. I was working at TSN, and then I worked at Discovery Channel in Canada for a little bit. And then I worked at a few other television networks. And I was always doing the interviews on the side. And then fast forward to 2017, I became a dad for the first time, and I knew I couldn't do both because I was doing obviously the interviews and the fighting stuff on the side, and I was having my day job in television. So I quit my day job and I went into this full time. And basically what I do and still do now is I'm a full-time freelance mixed martial arts journalist. So I work for multiple companies. They pay me for my interviews, and they pay me to do, just certain things, whether it's editing, doing interviews or editing, content as well. And that's how I make my living. So it's been pretty crazy. It's actually, I'm coming up to, it'll be 4 years. This October was when I did that back in 2017. So.
That's amazing. And first of all, congratulations on being a dad. And
thank you.
How long did it take you once you started doing your own interviews, to actually transitioning into getting paid for doing those interviews? How long was that time span?
That's a great question. Yeah. So it actually, I was lucky. It was almost immediately. So what ended up happening was one of the sites I was working for, and God bless them, because they gave me a great opportunity early on, is this site called MMA Oddsbreaker. And I started doing a podcast with them, with a co-host, a friend of mine, Adam Martin, and it was an audio podcast. And then they were asking me if I was interested in doing any more work, and they had someone else that was doing video interviews on the site. And I said, well, I'd love to do that as well too, but I don't want to obviously step on this person's toes. His name's Frank Trigg. He was doing sort of UFC interviews. And I said, you know what? I'll start doing some prospect interviews, some up and comers. That way, they're probably fighters that don't get a lot of exposure. And also, I'm not like an expert, so it'd probably be better for me to talk to fighters that are not as well known to start off. So, if I make any mistakes, it'd be a good way to sort of do that. Well, that strategy actually paid off really well because a lot of these fighters are now in the UFC. So they're a lot more popular now. And I had that relationship with them going back years. But I kind of lucked out where I was already working somewhere and doing some content for them, and they were willing to pay me for the interview. So I really lucked out with that. It was great.
That's amazing. And did you ever had the dream of stepping into the ring yourself, talking with all these fighters?
No, no. I mean, I played hockey when I was growing up, and I played rugby. I played a lot of sports that do involve some physical aspects. But no, I've never trained. I've never that's something I definitely want to do more of, especially as I've been doing commentary over the last couple of years.
Yes.
It's something on my list of things to do. But no, my background is hockey and rugby pretty much. So no background there. But I really love the sport. I watch it all the time. I study it, and I would consider myself more of a journalist and reporter than an analyst, but I certainly do some commentary work as well too.
Right. And you feel like your talent in speaking, you're so sharp and articulate. Do you feel like it was something that you had worked over the years, or do you feel like it's an inbuilt talent? So how do you view that talent?
I think it's a bit of both. For me, I was always watching sports, whether it was the highlights or listening on the radio. I remember working like a summer job at a golf course, and we'd always have sports talk radio on in the clubhouse. So I was always like around sports. So I think that helped me in the sense that I sort of got an idea of what sounds good, what doesn't.
Right.
But it's a lot of experience. Like I've done so many interviews, and I always tell this to people that want to just jump on camera, and I think it's great, but you got to be patient with it. I think one of the things that led to where I'm at today is playing the long game. I didn't figure that I was going to just jump into this full time. It took me a couple of years before I sort of figured out the industry, figured out what worked, what doesn't, and also figuring out, how to improve my presentation as well. I mean, it's taken me years to we were just, hopping on here and you're talking about my camera. I mean, that's something that I just fixed last year where I knew that this was a better way of streaming video was using a DSLR camera instead of just a regular webcam. So those are things, it's been an evolution. And I think to answer your question, I'd say it's a little bit of, me being outgoing, but also it's a lot of just paying attention to things and also getting those reps in and practicing. I think that's really been a key to where I'm at now.
And as a commentator, was there ever a time where you started feeling bored with just covering sports and just being it's a very niche lane. You weren't even into sports, you were specifically into MMA. So did you ever feel like a burnout? I
don't think I've ever felt bored, but I've definitely felt burnt out because this is, unlike other sports, it's a year-round sport. So there's always things going on, especially with the UFC. There's events almost every weekend. In fact, this is the one weekend where there's no UFC, and I actually got asked to do some work. And I said, I basically turned it down because I was like, look, I need a weekend off, because it's been a lot of work. But I think I'm one of those people that I try and do a lot, so I do tend to maybe overdo it every now and then. But I just listen to myself, talk to my wife, talk to my family. It's kind of I know when I'm doing too much work, so I always know when to sort of scale it back. But I think it's good to have other interests. Like I'm going to be, like I said, I golf a bit on the side. I obviously am a dad. I like watching hockey as well. Those are other interests I have. So I'm not completely 100% immersed in this industry, even though I am, following it a lot. So I think balance has been a really big key. I go to the gym in the morning. I make sure I'm, still on a routine. If there's a lot of UFC events that, let's say I do have things going on the weekend, I'll maybe PVR it and catch up on it the next day. I don't, necessarily watch it live all the time. So I think balance has been a very big proponent of me just staying sane in a very busy industry, if that makes sense.
And do you feel like you have so much freedom to be able to balance things because it's a freelancing thing and it's not a full-time job?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the reasons I really like it. And I'd be very sort of reluctant to go back to full-time. I've had a full-time job in this industry before, and it was great, and I did have a lot of freedom, but I just like the fact that I can basically make my own schedule. I mean, outside of a few podcasts that I have to do at a certain time, I mainly get to pick and choose the hours I want to do things. And it's great for me because I've always had the mentality that if I want to get a bunch of work done, and maybe let's say I'll work maybe more hours on a Monday or Tuesday, I want to be able to get rewarded for that and say, take a Wednesday afternoon off and go golfing, or have time to go spend with my son and take him to the to the park or something. So those are things that I really enjoy, and I like having that flexibility because I've worked in day jobs, and when I was in the television industry, I can tell you there were times when I'm looking at the clock and when is it lunch or when is it time to leave, and I like being efficient, and I don't like, not doing much. And I've had those jobs where you finish your work in 2 hours and you have the whole day to just basically waste away. I like being productive. And that's one of the things I like too, is that a lot of my work is based off, I don't get paid hourly, so I get paid for the content I do. So if I'm going to work really hard on a certain day, I'm going to get rewarded for that. And I get that time off on my own if I need, time for myself. So it's, to answer your question, yes, I love being a freelancer.
Man, I think that's excellent. You're doing something you love and you care about, but you're also so much in control of it. I'm very fascinated by it. And I want to ask you about two fights. One is the Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. What are your views on that fight?
I don't have such an issue with it like a lot of other people do. I look at that sort of, matchmaking as sort of like celebrity boxing, like what we had in the 90s, where you see like a washed up celebrity, going in the boxing ring and fighting. It's no different really, but in this case, YouTube stars are the celebrities of today, right? Like I think people forget that that's what teenagers, preteens, kids, that's their celebrity. Whereas back when I was growing up, it was like a movie actor or something, right? Like that's where you would put someone on a pedestal in that sort of sense. So I don't mind it. I was surprised to see Jake Paul win because,
Really?
you have a guy in Ben Askren who's not known for his striking, but at the same time, he has, years and years of combat sports experience. You think that to a certain degree that would have helped him. But, when you fight a guy who's younger and he's got a lot of power, it's inevitable that something like that's going to happen. So I was very impressed by Jake Paul and what he's done. And I think it's to be honest, like some people look down on it because they think it's taking away from other boxers. But I say it's actually bringing in a new audience because
100%.
chances are these YouTubers, the people who are a fan of the YouTubers probably weren't watching regular boxing fights, and now you're getting them in there. So I think it's all positive.
All right. Want to hear my views on it, and I want you to I feel like you're super credible enough to tell me if they are correct or wrong.
I'll give you my honest opinion.
I know Ben is an Olympian and whatnot, but what was really interesting is I've been someone who really has followed Jake religiously as a business person, not in terms of his content so much, and I just know how he bases his whole life on work ethic and effort and hard work. And when you were watching a lot of interviews, like their conferences, and both of them were on so many different podcasts, just promoting the fight, I observed that Ben was betting on how bad Jake is, and that is what his training was based on. Versus Jake's training was based on, irrespective whether Ben is a loser, super old, or whether he's a monster, he's like, I'm gonna fight like I'm fighting for my life. And that was justified when they had the official weigh-in, where you just saw Ben and it just looks like, he's not taking it seriously, or maybe he just could not care less, he just wanted to take that bag and leave. Versus and Jake did bring in a lot of new audience, because all of us like YouTube were watching, people wanted to watch the fight, and I developed an interest in boxing through these people. So I feel like Jake won because of who he is as a human being, and I feel like he might continue to prove himself as the underdog who wins these fights.
No, and I would agree with that. And you have to remember as well that Jake is very wealthy and well earned because of the platform that he's made. So all he's been doing for the last 3 years is boxing.
Right, training.
And he's brought in some of the best people in the world in that regard. So I think it also shows that, and granted, Jake did have a bit of an athletic background growing up, so that also helped. It's not like he's overweight and trying to box and then boxes Ben Askren.
Right.
But I think that having just a total focus on boxing is really honed, basically gave him his all going into this fight, whereas with Ben Askren, he never had to rely on his striking. He was a wrestler. The other thing you brought up, which is interesting, and it's something I didn't even really consider, is that Ben's, he's he never won a UFC title, but he won titles in other organizations.
Right.
He's competed at a high level in wrestling. He's had a very good career, whereas Jake really hasn't had that in the sporting world. So to some degree, you are right, where Jake, it meant more to Jake, whereas for Ben, it's like he's up there, he's got a family, he's accomplished a lot already. Yeah. Where's the motivation, where's the hunger? So I would agree with you there. I think that's a really good analysis.
And what were your thoughts on the most recent Logan versus Mayweather fight? Do you feel like it was kind of staged, or how do you think it went?
Yeah, well, I think, you just have to look to the fact that it wasn't actually a pro fight. It was an exhibition fight. So there's, and they didn't really have a winner. With Floyd, it's a bit interesting. I always find it so interesting when people are surprised that you don't see like a finish or a spectacular knockout from Floyd Mayweather. I know he did knock out Conor McGregor, but that's typically not Floyd's style. He's based more as a defensive fighter. He's a counter fighter, so he really moves his head quite well. That's why when people watched him and Manny Pacquiao, they're like, this fight's so boring. It's like, well, where have you been? That's how Floyd's been fighting his entire career. Yeah. So as far as it goes, Floyd's a smart guy. He's, he lives a very expensive lifestyle. He played this perfectly. You take on a guy in Jake Paul who doesn't have the experience. Floyd, no matter what, no matter who he's fighting, size or not, he's going to be able to avoid a lot of those shots because of the fact that he's so good defensively. Even at his age where he's slowed down a bit, the mental aspect of him knowing when to move at a certain point has really benefited him. And I think for Jake Paul it was a win as well because he can tell people, I went the distance with Floyd Mayweather. I didn't get knocked out like Conor McGregor did. So they, that's sort of a narrative as well. And for Jake, it's smart because again, he's reaching a new audience here. You're, impulsive and all that stuff that he does, that's all with one audience. But now you're going over to the sporting audience where people get to see him as well. So it's honestly genius on a business perspective of what he's been able to do and, calling himself, a boxer and all this stuff. And I think it's good. And it was smart to do an exhibition as well because this way it doesn't impact anyone at the end of the day.
I feel like everyone believed that obviously Mayweather would win without a question, but there was just a little hope because anything could go wrong or anything could go right in terms of Logan's favor. We felt like Floyd lost as soon as he announced that there's not going to be an announcement of a winner before the fight. Do you feel like that was just kind of bad on his part, his image in the boxing world?
No, I think because you also have to remember that Floyd did an exhibition fight for Risen, which is an MMA promotion. He fought a Japanese fighter as well, and he did end up finishing that fight. But I think it's just his security blanket, because here's the thing. Floyd Mayweather's not going to risk his undefeated record in boxing on a YouTuber. He's just not going to do that. So you make this an exhibition.
Yeah.
In the event, like you said, something crazy happens. Maybe Floyd slips by accident. He injures himself.
Right.
That's going to hurt his legacy. So this way it was a foolproof way for him to not impact his legacy. And not just that, but the size difference as well. I don't even think they could have allowed it in general in terms of, because you have to fight at a certain weight, right? So I think that's part of it as well, where it was just sort of a safety blanket for both fighters. Because again, if, Logan's not going to go there and fight a guy that's his size and, has to cut weight and all that, right? It wouldn't have benefited him. He's not going to go in there and get destroyed. So this way it worked out for both parties. And at the end of the day, they tricked a bunch of people into watching this fight, and they all made a bunch of money, if you think about it.
Right. On that note, what would you say is your story as a person, apart from your professional life, from, when you were born to Brett to today?
Oh, that's a great question. What is my story? I just think, I think I've taken advantage of a lot of opportunities that were brought my way. I consider myself, pretty hard worker and someone that, has maybe taken a longer road than some other people have in the industry. I think there's people that have, been at bigger platforms. They work for bigger networks, and that's fine. I know, deep down that I'm good at what I do. And I think that, I think my story is one of just, perseverance. There's no one in the industry right now that's doing what I'm doing, where they're full-time as mainly a video interviewer in the MMA industry. I'm one of the only people to do it. There are some people who do full-time in terms of writing and they're freelancers, but I'm just doing strictly video. And I found different ways to be creative as well. Like I do a lot of video editing. I have a Patreon. I have merchandise. Like I have all these different things that I really look at me as a brand at the end of the day, and not necessarily someone who works for a particular outlet. So I feel like in that way, I've been a bit of, I don't want to use trailblazer. That's really conceited of me to say that, but I feel that like I found a way to make this into a job. And I think it's years ago, I didn't even think this was a way of doing it. Because initially when I was wanting to do this full time, I thought I got to get on with one outlet and then that's it. I'll work full time and I'll be set. But I think we're even seeing now in all types of industries where if you work for one company, it's not guaranteed you're going to be at that company forever. It's not like the old days where, you could stay at a company for 20 years, you have a pension, you have benefits. I mean, I see it all the time, people getting let go of their jobs. The thing I like about this is, let's say something goes wrong with one outlet, I'm still getting, other outlets paying my way, and I'm still making money, and I don't have to worry too much about, being out on the street, so to speak. So it's, I think my story is just one that's figured this whole thing out and is making a living out of it and enjoying it in the process.
I remember you started your YouTube channel almost 6 years ago. Did you ever think that this is what was transitioned into, or did you always think that this would be a hobby and I would have like a full-time job like everyone else?
I think with the channel, I thought, I didn't really know what to think back then. I just knew that this was something I liked doing on the side, and I was able to make money off of it. And I think now, like I'll say this, I'm surprised at the money I've been able to make off YouTube, whereas I didn't think it would get to where it is now. Like I'm doing quite well on YouTube, and honestly, right now my YouTube channel is sort of a side to what I'm actually like my main job is, because basically so outlets pay me for my interviews, but the deal I have with them is any other content in that interview, I can use clips on my own channel, and some of those I use for like compilation videos, and it's just a way that I've been able to utilize the content without having to, like if I've landed a big interview, I get something out of that as opposed to just the flat rate of what I'm paid for the interview, if that makes sense. So that's something else I'm doing that I don't see a lot of other people doing. So it's another way that I've just been able to sort of maximize the content that I've been able to create. So to answer your question, I didn't think I'd be able to, have success. I didn't think I'd have 2 YouTube channels that would be monetized. So that's been a nice surprise as well. So it's been great.
I think it's so smart that even though you sell your asset, which is your video, you still retain the ownership, which is unheard of, like you said. And props to you did you think that through when you were doing it?
Yeah, I did. So what I used to do initially when I started, I actually had outlets that would just let me host the videos on my channel, and they would just have their branding on it, and I'd get paid for that. And that's great. And then obviously along the way, I realized, okay, well, that's not going to work for a lot of companies because they want to make money off the interview on their YouTube channel. So some of them I had agreements where I could just double upload, but then I realized YouTube doesn't like that, and they will start flagging you. And I've actually, I've seen that happen to other channels where, if you're double uploading content, YouTube will actually say, hey, hold on a second, you're taking advantage of our system, so we'll stop that. So what I've done as sort of a loophole is I just use clips. So I use little clips, 2-3 minutes, and I work for so many different outlets that it's not like really impacting that channel. And if anything, it's drawing people to that full interview, so it's helping out the outlet as well. So that's sort of like a middle ground I've found as well. And some have been not thrilled about it, but I just I try and be fair about it. I'm not going to give like a huge section of an interview on my personal channel. I'll maybe take a couple clips here and there and throw it on, but I think it's just finding that balance, and I think trying to figure out something that works for everyone.
That's amazing. And I know that you're working at GMG currently along with a lot of other things. So how has your experience been working at Gary Media Group?
It's been amazing. That's been literally my favorite thing that I've done this year. They've been awesome to work with. So I don't know if I'm going to be on for the playoffs. I'm sort of waiting to hear that because I do work for. So they're hired by PFL, which is a promotion that is like the UFC, but they're on they run a different format. So they have a regular season and a playoffs, and then the winner of the entire format gets $1 million. So what I do is I do broadcasts for Gallery for the PFL. And basically during the fights, I talk to fighters in between the fights, and it's just a way to drive people to not only watch the broadcast on ESPN2, but also to generate more interest on socials. So it's been a lot of fun. I do it from here. I wear a suit. It's a lot of fun. Like I really love it. The team's amazing. It's very easy to work with, and it totally came out of left field. I got an email one day asking if I was interested. I gladly accepted, and it's been awesome. And I really hope that I'll be back with them. And if not, it's been just a great experience and a very awesome experience to just know what type of work is out there in the digital media field.
Yeah, so interesting. You did not apply there directly, but you applied through something else, and they reached out to you.
I didn't even apply through anything. I just got I was word of mouth. And that's one of the interesting things about this industry. I will honestly say that a lot of the work I've got is word of mouth. It's not even me necessarily applying or reaching out. It's that because I do so much work, and I think because I've done such a good job of establishing my brand, that people know who I am in the industry. So they know if they need, something in particular, I get emails all the time. I get, DMs or on Twitter, I get messages on LinkedIn or anything, of people saying, hey, are you, and that's the beauty as well of being a freelancer, is that I'm not restrictive. The previous position I had, I was a senior MMA news editor for another company. I was exclusive. So I would get offers and I couldn't take them. Now I don't have to worry about that. I have a lot of opportunities, whether it's, PFL, or I have a regional promotion I'm working for where I do interviews for them. They have an event on Saturday, so I've been doing interviews for them this week, just for this week. And so the freedom to be able to take on whatever work I want is really awesome. And it just spreads my brand even further, just getting to work with so many different companies.
That's amazing. You feel like the reason you found so much success, it's a huge thing with big companies understand, who you are and know your name. Is it because of the numbers you've pulled up on your socials where they were able to see results that you were able to drive traffic to your channels?
I think it's a mix of both because, like Twitter, I have a decent following. I have about 15,000 followers on Twitter, which, honestly, from a media guy, it doesn't mean a whole lot because, in the grand scheme of things, because technically if I post a video, it should, if we're going by followers, it should equal what my follower count is. But I've had some videos that don't even do that. I think it's a combination of that because obviously you got to have a big presence. But I honestly think it's the production. I always make sure my stuff's really sharp. Like I have literally top of the line stuff here. I spend a lot of money. I look at it as an investment. Like if you're going to invest in your career, you're going to get the most out of it. So I have really high end equipment that I use for just this little small studio I have in my house. And then on top of that, I think it's just, I try and be professional. I don't try and, not a controversial person. I try and be professional in my interviews. I try not to, get involved with, politics or anything like that. I really sort of keep it, down the line when it comes to my interviews and all that. And that some people like that, some people don't, but I really think it's a way that people know I'm not going to be a liability if they hire me to do something. And I also think they know they're going to get top-notch work. And look, there's times I've been upset with, someone being late or missing a meeting and all this stuff, but I just keep it professional. I try and keep it as nice as I can. And you leave all that stuff out of the forefront, and you just make sure you're professional at all times. And there's been times where I've been upset about things, but you have to take a professional approach from it because you never know how quickly things can get back. And I just think you got to be patient when it comes to these things.
Damn, I mean, I have so much to learn, and I'm just making notes of everything that I must apply to myself. I want to ask you, even though you might say you have a small audience, which might be like 15,000 or 5,000, but because you're in such a specific niche, sports and MMA and fighting, that those couple thousand followers are super influential. You have a good influence over them, which maybe covers a huge sector of the audience in the sport. You know what I'm saying? There's no one who might have so much influence over an industry like you have. Maybe that is the reason that people are able to point you out.
Well, I think too, I'm very like, if someone DMs me about something or they ask me a question, I'll answer it. I make a lot of tutorials as well because I do get asked a lot of questions. And so my way is like, might as well make a little ad money off of it. If I can make a video on, hey, here's how you apply for UFC credentials. Here's what I used to, here's the software I use to edit all my interviews or, to record my interviews. And I do all these types of things because I do get asked a lot. And I do some consulting as well on the side. I've had a couple people reach out and I'll help them sort of establish their brand, whether it's on YouTube or social media, and just, little tips that I've sort of picked up along the way, because I do want to help people and I'd love to see people succeed as well. And getting back to your point about like, it could be a big deal. Maybe it is, but I always have that mentality that I don't want to think I'm too big for someone. Like that's why I still to this day, I'll interview like an amateur prospect. And then, like yesterday I interviewed Valentina Shevchenko, who's the UFC flyweight champion. Like to me, I treat every interview the same. I never want to come across as conceited or big headed because that's just how I am. So I sort of, if I'm not playing up my strengths per se, it's because I don't want to come across that way. And I think for me, I just want to be very approachable and I don't want to seem like one of those people who doesn't make the time of day. And I really am a believer that if you give back to people, it will come back to you. And I can tell you, I just had a post yesterday on social where I talked about how I got let go from my full-time job last year. And I did not know what was going to happen because I was a freelancer before and then I went full-time and then I was a freelancer again, but I had nothing lined up. And it was like, what am I going to do? And I just put it out there and I said, look, if anyone's looking for work, let's talk. And luckily it all worked out. I was able to, find work immediately. And it took me a little bit, but I managed to get back to where I was making enough to, support my family and all these things. And it really was the support of a lot of people. And it wasn't even just people who helped me, steer me in the right direction of certain, opportunities that were out there. It was just people of words of support, like, hey, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And it's really held true because I don't work for, there's a few outlets I work for that are a little bit more well-known, but a lot of the interviews that I've got has been because of what the fighter or the manager knows I'm going to bring to the table. They're going to get good quality. They're going to get something that's, well-researched and well done. And I think I've proven, if anything, is that you don't need to work for one of these big outlets to be successful in this industry. You can do it just based off your brand. Here's a great example. Ariel Helwani, the #1 journalist in our sport, left ESPN on his own accord, and now he's doing basically what I'm doing, which is he's working for multiple outlets because I think he saw the fact that you are a brand at the end of the day. Your audience will follow you no matter where you go, and there's more opportunity when you're not exclusive, and I feel like that's the freedom that he has now as well. And I think it's cool to see that he's now sort of joining what I'm doing, which is being a full-time freelancer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. On that note, I want to ask you two things. First is, what was the first sign where you started feeling like people started seeing you as someone credible to be able to,
You know what? This is going to sound, again, try not to sound conceited here, but I get recognized every now and then. Like, I remember going to, covering an event in Vegas, and I remember at the airport, someone came up and oh, are you James Lynch? I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I love your stuff. And that's sort of where it hit me. That's like, wow, there are a lot of people who do watch my content. Yeah. And I think that for me was a big one. I remember John Anik, who's the UFC commentator. I was seeing him at an event. He's like, oh, I love your stuff. I've seen, the fact that people, GaryVee has a great, quote. I'm going to butcher it here, but basically the summary of it is people are always watching, and it's so true. And I always remind people that when I have colleagues in the industry that get discouraged because maybe they're not making as much money as they want, or they're, maybe not moving up as fast as they want to. But I always remind people that no matter what, people are watching. Even that full-time opportunity that I previously had, that was something where someone had seen my stuff and they reached out. And even this PFL thing, that was something where someone saw my content, and I guess the word of mouth goes. So no matter what you're doing out there, just know that people are watching your content. They might not comment on it all the time, but they might be aware of you. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The question we ask everyone on the podcast is, are you happy?
I'm always happy. I'm grateful. I think gratitude is a really underrated trait in people. And I adopt this from a lot of other people, but I really do this every morning. I get up, and before I go to the gym, I always write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And I think gratitude is something that gets lost. We live in a social media bubble where everyone's competing against each other. You're posting photos and life's great and everything's good, but there's people, who have their own struggles. And I think it's very important to know what you have as opposed to what you don't have. One of the things with my position is you do get a lot of negativity, and that's something I'm seeing more and more now, the bigger I get. And it's for stuff that, I've always been the same, but you still get a lot of negativity on there, and it's easy to be sucked into that. Yeah. But you got to be grateful, and you got to be aware of what you have. So, I think even this morning, if I could actually, I'll tell you right now what I wrote down I was grateful for, just to give you a little sample of what I'm grateful I get to go golfing this afternoon. That was one. It just goes into the freelance thing. Second thing was just being very supportive. There's a lot of people who have, reached out over the last week, which is some of the stuff I've done, and just been very supportive. So I'm grateful that I have people that care about me. I think that's a big thing. And, my last one I wrote was just that I'm getting lots of opportunities in my industry where, I just had a phone call yesterday with someone about something new. So I think the reason I bring up gratitude is because it's very easy to, like I said, get sucked into a lot of negativity that's out there, especially on social media. And I think we lose perspective of what's the most important thing. Like at the end of the day, if this career went away, I've still got my family. I still have people that care about me and love me. And I know that with my work ethic, I can do anything. So I think for me, it's, if I'm not happy, something's wrong, and I got to figure out it's probably me lacking some gratitude if I'm not happy, if that can answer your question.
100%. What would you say would be a very life-defining moment in your life that really shaped who you are as a person today? Maybe it was an experience, maybe it was a book you read or anything.
I think for me, I remember working at a metal plant when I was 18 years old. I used to work for my dad in the summers, and I remember one summer he's like, no, you got to go out and find your own job. And it was just before I went to university, and I worked in a metal plant, and it was one of the worst jobs I've ever had. It was shift work. You're working 12-hour shifts day and night. Like I remember working like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. some of the shifts, and I was the youngest guy working there, and it was tough, and the pay wasn't great, but it was such a good experience for me so early on because it really taught me that there are people who have to do this to support their families, and there's people that need work like this to do it. And the job itself wasn't hard. I worked in a metal plant, basically took molten metal with a ladle and put it into a machine and pressed a button, and out came a part that was eventually used for like boats. And it was hot in the summer, and you have to wear anyways, it wasn't a great job, but that I think shaped me in the sense that it just showed me that you really got to work hard if you want to achieve what you want to do, and nothing's going to come easy, and you got to be patient. You can't just expect things to come right away. And I think that was something early on that sort of taught me the element of hard work. And I think that's helped me in a lot of situations because, there are long hours in this. It's not all glamorous. There's times when I've missed certain things because I've had to watch fights or I've had to, be away traveling. And I think that's always in the back of my head is that I could be doing that instead of this. So that to me was a good moment where I learned, the value of money, the value of, working hard, and the value of just making sure that if you do the right things and you put the time in, that you can achieve things that are great. And I feel bad for people who aren't getting to live the life they want to live because they're stuck in a job they don't like. I think it's for me, I'm truly lucky. I think every morning I wake up, I'm very, very, very just fortunate to be able to do this for a career.
Thanks for sharing that. I feel like that answers a lot of my questions personally, because I was thinking, where do you develop that discipline, or where did you develop that work ethic? Because you are so much on your own schedule, if you today don't want to do anything, just lie on your bed, just play all day. No one's stopping you. You're not accountable to anyone. But you even going to the gym or keeping this gratitude journal, this all talks about discipline, that's what you need. Everyone knows what are the right things one must do, but you show up every day and do it. And I feel like that experience such early on in your life really became the foundation of how you view work now, and what is the reason behind your work ethic, if I'm not wrong.
No, I appreciate that. Actually, one thing I did leave out, which does sort of explain a lot of the discipline and stuff. I was very fortunate in my teens. I got to go to a boarding school. So that was very structured. You're up early in the morning. I think we did have to go to school on Saturdays. This is the way the schedule worked out. And because they would, there's kids from all over that went to the school, from all parts of the country. So you would have, I think, 4 weeks of Saturday schooling, and then you get a week off or something. So it was very and it was very structured. You couldn't skip school. The classes were small that if someone was missing, they'd know where you are. It wasn't like a regular high school. So I've always been very much I think the biggest thing that I took away from the high school I got to go to was that just the structure. And I think that's helped me in so many areas, because especially something like this, if you're not disciplined, if you're not, willing to put the work in and make your schedule the way it is, it's very easy to be late for things and miss things and all that. And I'm very much glued to my Google Calendar and knowing what time I'm supposed to be doing things and how to get things done. So I think that's also really helped as well, is just, having that base of, okay, I got to be up at this time. I got to do this time. I can't sleep in. Well, I can't anyways, because I'm a dad, but still I just can't, I feel like I need to be doing something. So I'm always I'm always doing something. Even if a good day for me is when I've got things accomplished. A good day for me is not watching, doing a movie marathon. I can't do that anymore. I feel too useless. I got to do something.
Yes.
Even 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 doing a quick podcast in the morning. Tomorrow's a holiday. It's Canada Day here tomorrow. I'll be doing a podcast in the morning just to do something throughout the day. I'll still go to the gym. I'll still do all these different things. And that way, at least I feel like I've done something. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that so much. What would you say is your dream or your ambition or your end goal?
I've been asked this a lot recently, and I'll tell you, the answer a couple of years ago would be, hey, working at like an ESPN or something like a really big outlet. But honestly, I think the dream would be have my YouTube channel and have enough sponsors where I can just control all the content, where I own everything. I can do things on my own pace. I can work a little bit less because I do work a lot. And that's the dream, is just to be able to be self-sufficient, just a full business with sponsors, and just do this where I can kind of even scale back even more than what I'm doing. Like, I love it. I know at some point I'm gonna have to scale back a little bit, but the goal would be have a self-sustaining, channel where I have regular sponsors, and I'm just like, I don't have to worry about numbers or anything. I know everything's gonna work out. That's the goal, is to be completely 100% self-sufficient.
Yeah. Well, I really hope you get there as soon as possible, and I'm super inspired by, I'm also trying to do my podcasting, build up here and there, because I learned a lot from Gary. I was like, I'm super young and I'm not sure, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, start a podcast, start making content, start building your brand. And, the more you do, the more you're able to understand, oh, this is something I do like, this is something I don't like so much. And I always thought it to be a very homegrown thing, like I did not keep any lighting or anything like that, because I wanted to show that you can start off with your Mac, screen record the whole thing and post it. You don't need a lot of money or heavy production to be able to get things done. But now with time, I am trying to polish and, be better. And I even applied at GMG for a podcast host that they were looking for, 1:37 p.m. and stuff. Cool. So I hope that works out. And that's why I started, like Gary says, people are the biggest ROI. So I started networking with a lot of people in that industry. And that's how I also found you. And just learning, like, how is it that I need to improve, and what can I learn from people, and how do I make myself better to, get my foot in the door eventually. So I'm really grateful for you to share that stuff.
No, thank you. And vice versa. Like, it's so cool to see people. It's funny. There's a lot of people that I know that are like, follow Gary's work. And it's so funny. Like, I remember reading his book, the second book, I think it's second or third, I can't remember which one, but the book where he predicted that TikTok would be as big as it is. Like, it's crazy, all the stuff that he said that's come to fruition. But the crazy thing is, was I full-time then? Yeah, I think I was freelancing then. But the most interesting thing when I'm reading this book is a lot of what Gary was saying were things I was already doing. And I feel like I was hearing someone speaking my language about branding, about all these different things that I just sort of stumbled upon. So he's been a huge influence as well in terms of, producing content and doing all that stuff. And, he's big on gratitude as well. And I've learned so much from him. Like, I've probably learned more from him than, a lot of stuff I learned in college or university. So it's been cool. And that's like I said, like, doing any of this type of stuff, like, it's so beneficial for me because, it's networking, it's learning from other people, it's learning from other people's experiences. And one thing we didn't talk about here, which I think is so crucial as well, is just taking feedback and taking it in such an important manner, and just not taking things so personally. I mean, no one likes to hear they're not good at something, but that's the only way you're going to grow. 100%. But the key thing is learning from people you respect. So many people will like take a YouTube comment, they'll be like, oh man, like I shouldn't have done that. But it's like, who is that person that's telling you that? Would a garbage man tell a chief financial officer how to run their business? Probably not. Yes. So you should find people that you respect to give you that advice and sort of go from there. And that's what I always sort of leave a rule of thumb. Like, even with like my equipment and stuff, I had a guy that I met through a company I used to work for that was like really good with tech stuff. And he actually was the one who helped me get all this equipment. Yeah. And like, he's a guy I go to now when I need any sort of tech advice. And you need people like that in your corner. It's not, success is not built off one person. It's built off an army. And I always keep that mentality as much as I can. So I'm
so happy that you're also like super from the Gary community, because I've built everything off of that. I feel like the first couple of guests I had were from his comment section, because I know that people who follow him are just kind and nice, and no one would be rude and mean. And it started off to a really good start. Last two questions I want to ask you is, what would be your advice for young people, people who are just trying to run towards their dreams, and in your youth you could be a little confused, but what would you say? What would you like to tell us?
I would say, I always tell this to people, find things that you're passionate about and you're interested in. Find the best. I mean, this is kind of repeating what Gary says, but it is very good advice. It's find people that do what you like the best, and try reaching out to them, and try and get sort of a mentorship from them, or try and learn from them if there's things that you like. Don't, like, the dumbest thing I see people do on social media is they'll post something and be like, what do you think? Well, you're going to get a bunch of people that are either going to say something really nice or negative, but have no substance behind it, because they're likely not people that know what is good or bad content. It's like a comedian going to a church and trying to get advice on what's funny or not. It's not going to work out. So I think the biggest thing is just, find things that you're passionate about. and start doing those things. Like, don't, make time on the side. Like, we're all busy, but if you really enjoy something, you'll make time for it. Put down the Netflix for one night and, put some time into something you're passionate about and really grow that and build it and just, get constructive criticism, and don't have an ego. That's another big thing. Like, a lot of people think they got it figured out. You don't. You're always learning. You should always be learning. Like, I know there's things I need to improve on, and I've been doing this a very long time, but that's the mentality you always got to have, is that it's never a final product. It's always, an evolution in terms of what you're doing. So I think the advice is, just, have something on the side, be passionate about something, work and make money, and don't necessarily save money, but you should save money, but be focused. Make sure that you're really, putting yourself out there and doing things that you enjoy, and just sort of, know it's an evolution, and play the long game. My goodness, like, all these people who want to be millionaires right away, like, it doesn't happen overnight. Gary's a great example of this, of someone who, worked with his father and then sort of, built the foundation for what he is today. So just don't feel like it's in a rush. Travel. I think that's a great piece of advice. If you can travel, I know we're in a pandemic, but once things loosen up a little bit, travel, learn from other people. You mentioned the art, the sort of the value of learning from people. That's such a valuable experience. So I would say travel. I would say find something you're passionate about, and be afraid to, don't be afraid to take risks, because you're going to fail. That's inevitable. That's one thing I wish I was taught when I was younger, is that you're going to have things that fail. But if you don't fail, you don't learn. If you don't take risks, you don't learn. You got to put yourself out there and find things that way. I've had so many opportunities that haven't panned out, but guess what? I'm here where I am, and it's, it's because of those failures. So don't be afraid to fail either. Just, take it in stride, and just, be grateful and know what's around you and not what you don't have. That's the biggest thing too.
Thanks so much, man. That was really powerful, and I think I'm definitely, that's one of the clips that's gonna go on my Instagram, for a highlight of this interview.
Awesome.
I want to ask you, is there anything that you would like to ask me?
I'm curious what your end goal is. What's the dream for you right now?
So the short-term goal right now is to work for someone. I feel like I'm going to look at my youth, I'm 22 right now. I want to look at my early 20s and late 20s as training. I feel like I'm a sword, and I want to sharpen my skills and sharpen my own self, working for other people, learning, growing, and become a huge asset. And then I would want to start my own, company, agency. I feel like I see a lot of youth, and I actually had a really bad experience at school, and I'm from India. So in India and Asia, like, the school is your life. If you're not good at school, you're good at nothing. That's what they say. Yeah. But since I had a really bad experience at school, I was bullied by my teachers and stuff. I think that's when I decided that formal education is not something that I'm going to follow. And I'm going to build my path, and I'm going to build my wealth apart from it. And that's when I started consuming business books and Gary and credible people. If I want to learn about a business, I'm not going to read a book which is written in 2008 and talking to a teacher who's never built a business, but rather learn from Gary and then start executing on those advices. And like, if you would say, start networking with people, the biggest ROI are people. I started doing that to the podcast and stuff like that. So I think right now the short-term goal is to land up a really great job. And since it's the pandemic, so a lot of companies are hiring remotely. I even got into the first interview round at VaynerMedia, but I'm not really a creator. I don't have those kind of skills. I know how to cut and paste clips. I was able to get to the first round, but that opened up my mind to a lot of things, that there are a lot of companies who are ready to hire remotely and work. You can work from home and stuff. So therefore, I was applying at GMG, networking with people, understanding where I'm at. But the end goal would be to empower the youth and I'm also documenting my process through YouTube and stuff. If this connection leads to something else, this is recorded here. If people are like, how do I network? I've documented it all. I'm leaving it out all on YouTube to kind of lay out a blueprint on how it's done. And I also feel like it's going to take me like 7-8 years, but I want to document the whole process of how I sharpen my own self and then establish like a really solid foundation that can help other youth, transition from talent to money and building a life for themselves.
That's amazing. I didn't even own a webcam at 22. I would have never guessed you're 22, by the way, just because you're very, you speak very maturely for 22-year-old. Mind you, I don't hang around with a lot of 22-year-olds, but still, it's very interesting. So I think that's great, and you're so right. Like, formal education, I didn't do well in school. I remember going to a boarding school, especially. All the cool kids were the smart kids. There's people I went to high school with that went to Harvard, and I've never even went anything close to that. But it's all about finding your niche, and you're so right that so many things are outdated, and if the people you're around really do make you better, and reading books and business and all that stuff, everything's changing very rapidly, and if you're following the trends, you're going to be very successful. So the biggest asset you have right now is time, and that's so awesome. So that's cool, and I know you're going to be successful. That's the coolest part, is because you've already laid this foundation out, and you're already doing the things that you're supposed to do. So that's going to be really awesome to see, and even the next couple of years, you might even get to where you're getting to even before your end goal. But that's the fact that you even look that far ahead is so awesome. So I want to say congrats, because I think you've figured out a lot of things a lot of people haven't yet. So that's great.
I really appreciate it. It was just like learning from people and how supportive people are. Like even you saying yes, these small victories lead to the big victories, and they help me in build confidence. Your feedback, or you're saying yes. Like I would hit up 100 people, 50 people, one person says yes, and like from Gary, you understand patience, and it's a volume and numbers game, so you don't get discouraged when people say no. So I really, really appreciate that feedback. And if you have time, I have one last question, or I can ask you
Sure.
2 questions. So.
No, whatever you need. Yeah,
Okay.
I probably got like 20 more minutes left. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I want to ask you, what was really interesting is when I started following Jake, I saw that a lot of fighters were not making enough money. That is something I learned from Gary also when he established VaynerX Sports, is talent struggle to be able to transition into building a life for themselves and making money. And something that Jake and these guys did, even though one might say that they don't have the talent enough, but they were able to, like boxing essentially and MMA and everything, it's a business, you're supposed to make money for the channel, for the network, and for yourself. So you feel like fighters are getting underpaid? Like I know even Sarah Alpar recently
Did the
spoke that
GoFundMe, yeah.
Right. So what are your thoughts on athletes not being able to make
100%
money?
they're underpaid. Yeah, so it's the UFC. What the UFC's done is they've created a similar model to the WWE, where they're about the brand. It's not like boxing, where like a Jake Paul can, yes, he works for Showtime now, but even before that, Jake Paul was the brand. People,
Yes.
they would build a card around him. With fighting, it's not really like that. It's like if you want to get paid the most, you go to the UFC, and they hold all the cards. Like they can control what happens. Whereas in boxing, and that's, it's good and bad, because obviously in boxing, sometimes fights don't happen because fighters are more concerned about, what sort of makes sense for them. And maybe it's not what the fans want per se, but absolutely they're underpaid. But the problem as well, like I see both sides of it, where it's like, unfortunately, the UFC has not, like a Conor McGregor, the reason he's so popular and successful is because of 3 things that I think people forget. Number one, he's a very good self-promoter. I mean, he could be in any sport and he would be a popular athlete. 2 is the fact that he's from Ireland, and that if he was an American, I don't think he'd be as popular as he is, because he's coming from Ireland. It's like a sort of a rags to riches story, and just how many like Irish athletes, maybe I'm being a little naive here, are really like world renowned, like maybe like a Rory McIlroy or some, you know what I mean? Like outside of that though, like how many like on a global scale have really sort of made that mark? And number 3 is he's good at fighting. He's entertaining. He's not a guy that's beating his opponents by decision. He's finishing fights. And so it's sort of the trifecta, and it's so rare to have that's why he's been successful. But, there's fighters that are extremely talented that, have say one part of that. Let's say they're a great fighter, they're entertaining, they're exciting, but it's like, are they on the same scale as like a LeBron James? No, they're not, because it's just not as popular as some of the other things out there. So the UFC could definitely be paying their fighters more, but I also see the other side of it, where some of the viewership does not match up with what maybe some other sports do. So it's like, if you want to get a sponsor on board, or you want to get someone to be on board with it, the numbers got to add up as well. So I see both sides of it, but I'm definitely more on the fighter side, that they should get paid. They should have health insurance. They should have all these things that every other sport has, but the UFC doesn't. The UFC gets away with it because they have a performance institute where fighters can go train there for free and do all that, but not everyone can go and live in Las Vegas or train in Vegas. So it doesn't work. It would be better if they had better pay and they had health insurance and they had like a long-term plan, because that's the other thing. Like after you're done fighting, what do you do after that? There's nothing set up for them. So I would definitely agree with that.
Do you think that fighters should also focus more? I know like training is a big part of, their performance and their end ambition, but do you think now they should also start focusing more on building different revenue streams, start making content,
100%.
Start looking themselves as brands so that they can drive viewership? In this situation, all you're giving UFC is a fight, but if someone like Jake Paul, he brings so much more to the table. He's getting viewership and stuff. So probably if fighters start looking themselves as media companies and divert a little bit time over there, also it's going to play out in their favor.
100%. And I think it's so crucial to use that. You turn the tables, use the UFC as your brand going forward, use that platform. Like if I'm a fighter and, I could, like there's fighters I know that can go do like an appearance at a bar and get, $50 cover to go, meet this fighter. And that's, a couple $1,000s a night, right? If you think about it, like that's a simple business plan, but that's something a lot of fighters don't even do. So I think that's something where like, yeah, absolutely. In any industry, like get your merch out there, make a lot of merch. Like, Barstool, I know they're very controversial, but one of the things they do a really good job of is they sell a ton of merch. I always follow their stuff, and they literally, like, that's how they make a lot of their income as well, is just like really making really cool merch that people can wear and they feel part of a community. Do the same thing with fighting. Like the UFC has their own brand through Venom where they make their own shirts. But if you're a fighter, why not get a graphic artist to make your own design and have people wear that? It's free advertising. It makes you feel a part of that fighter or whatever. It all helps out. So that's another thing. And then, yeah, just getting yourself out there, like post, make sure you're active on social media. Post, it doesn't even have to be training. Show different side of yourself that people aren't going to get to see. So I think those are all things that are crucial for a fighter after fighting, because you got to think of long term, because you can't fight forever. So you got to think of like, 100%. What are ways that I can captivate that brand and still make money off of it, in the years after retirement.
Right. Would you be afraid that someone might not have the bandwidth to be able to, all they have is to offer is the fight, but then it takes an infrastructure to be able to, establish a social media presence and whatnot. So do you think that there might be people who might not have the bandwidth to do that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, but I think also you got to make time for it. Like, I think that if you want something enough, you make it a priority. Like it could even just be like a post a week or something on social media, or you pay a graphic designer to make you a logo. You can use that logo as much as you want. It's one small investment for a long-term, thing of branding, right? So that's another thing. Like that's what I did actually. I paid a graphic artist to make me a logo, and it's on everything I do. And if someone sees it, they're like, "What is that?" It's my company, whatever, So it's something that I think a lot of fighters should look into and should make a priority, because it's no different than setting yourself up for a pension. It's like your pension, but the brand version of it,
Perfect. What are your thoughts on Ryan Garcia? I feel like he was the person who's done a great job on utilizing social media and getting his name out there.
I think he's great. I would consider myself a casual boxing fan. I know of Ryan Garcia. I've seen his fights. I've seen the videos on Instagram with the hand speed. I mean, it's great, but he has done such a good job, like you said, captivating the YouTube audience. Yeah. He's a guy that understands the branding very well. And, he could be a mediocre boxer. He's not. He's actually a very good boxer. But even if he was, the fact that he's found a way to captivate that audience has put him ahead of so many other boxers. And a lot of the boxers complain about, I need to get paid more, or whatever. It all translates to viewership. And viewership is created by fight style. It's created by your brand. It's created by a lot of things. And you got to captivate all those things if you want to be successful. So Garcia's, he's going to be around for a long time, because he's doing a lot of things right.
Awesome. I feel like there are a lot of content creators in the market right now, and that's why Gary also has like a whole section of Vayner Sports, which is helping athletes sustain themselves long term, beyond their fighting or playing tenure and stuff. And I feel like I want to direct the youth, if someone is really interested in sports, they should start reaching out to athletes and tell them that, hey, let me edit videos for you, let me do your graphics for you and stuff like that, and help them, get their foot in the door in the industry. And it's going to be like a mutually beneficial relationship for the both of them.
Exactly. That's a great idea. And I think you do see a lot, because I work with actually a lot of Vayner Media clients, fighters, because I do a lot of interviews, and notice most of them have one thing in common. They all have something on the side. Like Stipe Miocic, the former heavyweight champion, he's got a podcast, he's got a coffee that's out there that you can buy, utilizing that brand. Super smart of him to do that, because again, he's getting into his 40s. He's not going to be able to fight forever. So the fact that he has laid that out is very, very, very smart. And if you're getting into the sport, that's a great idea, is, attach yourself to something, and then it can lead to greater opportunities. So very good advice there. I agree.
Awesome. And on the last note, I want to ask you, would you have any feedback for me? Any way we could have improved this episode or anything at all?
No, I really, I'd have to go back and watch it, but I think you're very punctual. You speak very well. You ask very good questions. I've been asked stuff in here that I've done so many podcasts I don't think I've ever been asked. So I think that's good. And you were researched. You knew stuff that was good. Believe it or not, I see a lot of interviews where there's not a lot of research or not a lot of thought put into it. So nothing off the top of my head, but maybe if I watch back this, I'll think of a few things. But again, the fact that you're even asking that, very good. Puts you ahead of a lot of other people. So.
Thank you so much. James, it was such a pleasure to have you, and I'm super, super grateful for you. I'm going to edit this podcast and post it on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook and stuff, and I'm going to tag you all over and share the links with you. And please reach out to me if there's anything I can ever do for you and stuff like that.
Vice versa, if you have any questions about anything with tech or anything recording, video editing, any of that stuff, just reach out. I'm always available and more than happy to help. And I appreciate the opportunity. It's cool for me to be a part of a different audience that maybe I normally wouldn't be a part of. So it's all positive all around. I'm all happy about it. So
thank you, man. Have a great rest of the day. I hope you have an incredible golfing session. And
thank you.
Look forward to speak to you again.
Before we go, what time am I getting you at? I hope I'm not keeping you up too late or too early. What time is it right now?
I'm afraid it is. It's about 2 a.m. right now because of a time difference.
See, this is what I'm talking. I would have known that. Now, I could have probably picked a later time if I know I gave you that time frame.
No, it's all good. It's a perfect timing.
The dedication to even do that. It's funny you mentioned that, because I've done an interview. I remember interviewing a fighter from Hawaii. I really wanted to get the interview, and because of the time change, they could only do it at a certain time. I got up at 1 a.m. to go do the interview. So it's the fact that you're doing that is that just shows the dedication. So yeah, I think that's awesome. So
thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Please, let's make a point. I really want to stay in touch. I'm going to DM you on Instagram.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
yeah, you ever want to pick my brain or even do a call or anything? Like, I'm totally cool with that. Because like I said, I can learn from you, I'm sure, and there's stuff that I'm sure I could help out with as well. So yeah, just don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always available.
Thank you so much. I'm actually applying to GMG. I've submitted my application. I want to know, like, do you think, what can I do more if I need to improve somewhere? The thing I struggle with is, what I'm good at establishing relationship with people. I feel like I'm good. I'm nicely emotionally intelligent. I'm able to genuinely leave a good impression, but I'm not anywhere in any niche, like it's not digital, it's not NFTs, it's not sports, it's nothing. So how do you think I should go from there to genuinely land up like a good job position?
I would talk about your versatility. I think just that right there. You just talked about how you're not necessarily in one niche, but you can do all these different things. Sell that. There might be a fit on a certain area that they might need of someone who can do everything. Because, a lot of people, back then, like I know so many people who don't edit their own interviews. I find that crazy. Like, learn how to edit. It's not that difficult. So I would just sell that and just say that you're versatile and mention the fact that you're doing interviews at 2 a.m, the dedication. Like, it doesn't matter what it needs to be done. It'll get done. Like, just show your willingness and your eagerness and do that. Like, with my experience with them, like, it's just very easy. Like, they send me literally like an itinerary. I talk to a producer, I hop on, they tell me the guests, and then we just go with it. And, it's just, that's about it. So I don't have like a ton of contact with them, but it's usually just during the fight week and stuff, but they've been so cool, so supportive, just really good feedback. And so I would just, be yourself and just, give it what you can and just take whatever, if it works out, it doesn't work out, just take it as all feedback and experience you can use for next time and just ask for feedback, and they'll be the ones to tell you, and then you take that feedback and use it for the next time, or if you do get it, then even better, so it's everything's a learning experience. That's how I would look at it. So
thanks, man. I really this has been a very, very valuable episode for me.
Good.
So
well, hey, it's good for me too. It's good to meet someone who's in this industry as well, because I'm sure, like, who knows, maybe I'm not going to be doing this in a couple of years with fighting. Maybe I'm doing something else. So it's always good to expose myself to different industries. So it's cool by me. So it's all good. So thank you for taking the time.
Of course, 100%. Look forward to speak to you soon. Bye.
Yep. Take it easy. Have a great get some sleep. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes. Bye. Thank you.